So now that you had a great morning of education, thanks to Barbara and Warren, you'll get to the people who would rather not do, but write about it and find out what's on their mind and what it is that they're looking for and what they're seeing and how we can all work together to turn up the volume about good kids programming. First, for those of you who don't know, I'm Robin Raskin. I run something called Living in Digital Times, and it's a bunch of exhibits and conferences that took a normal trade show and said, who really cares that this is Intel, this is Microsoft, this is Philips? Let's just tell a story about this is what's new for kids, this is what's new for moms, this is what's new for boomers, digital health, sports and fitness, so education. So I try and cross all the plateaus of different user experiences and groups, and I hope that I personally will encourage you to do some of that. You know Warren, you've met him. Richard, do you want to introduce yourself to me? Mike, oh, wait.
Yeah, where's that clip? Okay. Where's that little hand? That's okay. We're okay.
Okay, let's do a quick introductions down our panel, and it will help you understand the context of this.
I'm Richard Gottlieb, and I'm a toy industry and play industry consultant. My company is Global Toy Experts, and I publish a magazine called Global Toy News and put on conferences, including the World Congress of Play, and I do some speaking.
Hi, I'm Claire Green with Parents' Choice Foundation. We also do a little once-a-year thing called Sandbox Summit at NYT. And at Parents' Choice, we run the Parents' Choice Awards program, which has been around, we've been around since 1978. So for the 3 or 4 people in the room who are old enough to know what that is, here we are.
I'm Bob Tedeschi. I've covered technology for the New York Times since about 1998, and a few years ago started the App Smart column, which just reviews apps.
I'm Chris Byrne. I'm content director for TimeToPlayMag.com. We're the largest toy reviewing website. We just launched a shopping app, Shop for Kids. We get more than 10 million views a month of our reviews, and we do review apps. So,
Okay, so Chris just came out with a great book that I think, Warren, everybody gets.
Yeah, everybody
Right? Chris, favorite toy when you were a kid?
Matchbox cars, because they could be anything I wanted at any time. I could be OCD and line them up and categorize them. I could smash them. I could light them on fire. I could do all the things that a normal child wants to do.
Bob?
Basketball.
Because you were
My
tall
favorite
enough to
toy.
play.
There's a ball. You can do anything. Legos.
That was
The
right. Which was,
No, it was
of course, your parents' nightmare for stepping on them all night. Claire, favorite toy?
Bicycle. I could go anywhere and get away from the lunacy.
My mom's typewriter.
Oh, they're telling.
Depends on my developmental level, but I love to throw rocks.
Yes.
Shit, I love fire. Threw a lot of rocks.
Why am I-
Yeah,
None of this
exactly.
surprises me in the least.
We actually used to do sheep or boat arrows with each other, real arrows. Very scary.
So, when you look back at the apps that you've seen and the transformative play that you've seen, what do you think your kids might say is was their favorite plaything? Warren?
My kids might.
Well, maybe your little kids, your grandchildren.
Well,
Not yet.
very interesting question. My kids were rare because they grew up in every kind of technology from the very beginning, and so they loved pushing the limits on everything. And one of the things I think that I have 2 daughters, and they are avid gamers, and they could outgame any adolescent boy in any game, Assassin's Creed, anything. And so they love, and they to this day, they when they find a new boy to torture, they bring him home and they play video games with him and beat him. And I'm very, very proud of that.
I think any of the any of the construction toys. I think that there's a lot of really. I think it's fascinating to me that children want to build. whether it's physical or digital. They want to build. And we put so much focus on products that engage in tearing things down and destroying. But it seems like the human condition mostly is about building. I find it really wonderful. So, yeah.
There's a question. The kid, what will they love? I brought a lot of things that they shouldn't love. But no, I think it's really, really interesting to see. I think it's way too early to take a look back and see what, I'll talk about that tomorrow. But I think the progression just in the few years of Duster Magic, when apps started coming in, the progression is staggering. The opportunity, the delivery. I was just talking to Sophie about how far and how rich their apps have become, even more so from the Tickle Tap app to the music box that we saw today. And it's really a staggering improvement, very rich.
I think my son, who's 11, I've got 4 kids, but my youngest is 11, and he also grew up with a lot of Legos. I bought them by the pound, and we dump them in the middle of the floor, and they just go. And now he's a Minecraft kid, so I agree. I think building is a big thing. But I think when they look back on the other digital toys they played with, I think photo booth is a huge one. They would just spend, and they still spend a lot of time just sitting there playing with, just playing. And so I think that's a simple one.
I think anything that puts the child at the center of the experience is really the most important thing. We talk a lot about toys that aren't complete without the child. You don't need an Elmo or a doll you turn on, go leave the room, have a sandwich, come back and say, well, that was a fun play experience. It's things that challenge kids, keep them central. And I think that one of the things you guys can do as app developers is really highlight that, because some of the apps that are being done by the mainstream toy manufacturers are really inferior because they're add-ons as part of the marketing process. They're not really designed to engage kids.
Okay, so I know that you have things to show. Anybody else have things to show and tell on this panel? Okay, so let me ask you. We saw some demos this morning, and of the demos that we saw, one had a tactile component with the shapes. How do you guys feel overall? Toy app combos. You think we saw a number of them in the past years, and are they waning, waxing, poorly done? What do you think?
I like it when it's a value add, so that it doesn't depend on the object, so that it stands alone. I would like to say the finger is the greatest peripheral, and then the other stuff works. Yeah, it's cool, but you still have the core experience.
The traditional toy industry is essentially a 19th century industry, really trying hard to break into the 21st century. And I think that I agree with Chris. I think some of the accessories were what you would expect from people who really don't totally understand the technology or really understand the business model. So what I see is what I call seamless play, where the digital experience is ingrained in the physical. And one of the things I like to, if I ran the show at Hasbro, I would take Clue. And it seems to me when you're playing Clue, you ought to be able to call the Colonel Lester on the phone while you're playing and ask him about Mrs. White. You know, and that phone call should allow you to have a richer experience of the game. And so, to me, that's what I'd like to see more of, is just things that really expand the universe of the game.
Richard, why don't you tell them about the playground that you've had some experience with, what they're doing with apps, because I think it's so unique, the Play-Doh.
Yeah, well, I'm working with a playground company right now, and it's I'm consulting with them because they're beginning to realize that they're not the playground industry or in the play industry, and they got to compete with all of you and everybody else. And so the challenge is how do you to bring apps and digital play into an outdoor experience that enriches it. It's not just an add-on, but it really actually enriches the experience. So I think that it's kind of an exciting time as people are starting to stretch and grow and challenge themselves a little bit. What was that term about if you're uncomfortable?
Disequilibration.
Yeah, that. Disequilibration. Disequilibration?
Yeah, you got it. It's good. Good job. I praise you for that. Get the chocolates for you.
I'm just curious about how's that working out?
We'll find out. They're going to be showing
They will be showing
at
at
CES. So
And they built a playground where you have an app to navigate your play experience. Sort of, anybody remember Hidden Treasure, Hidden Park? It was, you use it in parks all around the world, and it sort of gave you your next clue to move to the next thing. It was a combination of augmented reality. It was kind of amazing. Go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, no, I just think that, pardon me, Dr. Freud, but sometimes a swing should just be a swing.
And you, yeah, I don't know if we can go back there. And that's
I
a
don't know
really
either,
good
but
question.
it doesn't mean that we can't have both.
I think you could make a swing swingier.
Uh-oh, I think we're back. Do you want them to use the microphone or punch each other?
We do like this equilibration in panels, and it's great, but the experience at CNA Kid, where technology could augment the play, was very revealing to me. And I think Montessori would have liked it. That's one of the questions, is what would these core theories have to say? Does it empower or enhance or enhance? But I'd love someone to disagree with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Chris, and I'll follow.
Well, I think it depends on where the iPad and the screen fits in the day part of the child and how that's being integrated. Parents are telling us they are trying to limit screen time. That doesn't mean that they're trying to limit the screen time, which means TV is being limited. It's going to app. It means any screen time. But to Richard's point, yeah, it'd be great to have a game of Clue that worked if it did, because Hasbro came out with all these games that were terrible. Because you sat there, we called it Monopoly that plays with itself. Because you sit there and you take what is essentially a very interactive game among people, board gaming, which is all about the social context, and you have 4 people staring at a screen, and you undermine the purpose of, completely undermine the purpose of the game. The other thing that and Mattel knows I hated this year, was they came up with a track set that had an app attached to it. So you have this beautiful track with all these loops and all these tricks you can do, and you put an iPad in front of it that's got an animation that looks at one tiny part of the track, and you go, that's totally a waste, and how much did that cost them? And it's just, it's really, where does it fit into the play experience? And it is an old business, but to adapt David Kleeman's idea, the development is the same, but the props are changing. But there's still all these classic things that stay together, stay part of it rather.
And I've seen a lot of these things come across my desk, and I've not seen one stick yet.
Let's talk about the 20,000-pound gorillas in the room. Disney's Infinity and Activision's Skylanders. Any thoughts on Sphero? Yeah.
Well,
And they are back here?
It's Swap Force this year, and I love both of them. I really do, because here's why I like Disney Infinity, because today's parents grew up playing with video games. It is not the thing the kids are doing in the basement, it's the thing that the family's doing around that. If you've seen the toy box aspect of Disney Infinity, it's brilliant, because you can bring Jack Skellington into an Incredibles world, and it's just very, very creative. Parents already know this mythos, if you will, whereas Skylanders is a world unto itself that kids love, and knowledge is their currency. They love playing it, and I think they are both very integrated play experiences.
Does everybody know how this works? Does anybody need to know about Skylanders or Infinity?
Yeah, tell us.
Okay, so first of all, you go to the store. There's a physical thing you must purchase to play, and they are characters basically that use a near-field communications to talk to a pedestal.
It's the portal of power, Robin.
Oh, so you put your figure down on this portal, and you are transported into the virtual world. Now, as Chris said, in Skylanders, it's the story of Spyro and his friends, and the new ones are swappable, that they take on different powers as you mash up these physical things, taking arms off, other legs off, and interchanging bodies. And the state of the game in your virtual world is preserved in your character, so you can take your character to your friend's house and play there, and on any cross-platform that you want. Disney is similar, but different. With the Disney characters, they don't swap out or anything, but you can, in the toy box, for example, you can make a soccer game between Pirates of the Caribbean and Cars. And you do elementary programming and sort of take these virtual world, all activated by your physical characters. So from a toy selling perspective, the toy folks love this. And from a Disney, I think what I've heard from them, it was really hard to get over the fact that they were going to give up their IP into players' hands everywhere and just see what happened, because you can actually share games with friends and develop games together. And it's pretty extraordinary, and I think now that they have done it, they're really excited about it. And I think, Chris, sold out everywhere?
It will be sold out. It's really, and they keep introducing new characters, and it's really immersive, and it really is. The thing is, it's a whole family activity as opposed to Skylanders, which is really skewing very much boys. I would say 7 to 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what they get is that kids live in this huge universe. There's no separation between what's real and what's unreal, and what's digital, what's physical. And I know in the toy industry, it's a real challenge. We have a leadership that really, many of us, we're immigrants to the digital world, and so it's not intuitive as to how to speak to those children. But like Decker said to me from Saban, he said, how do we speak to children who carry a window to the world around in their pocket? And they have a lot of control over that. So that's why I think these games work so, these toys work so well, is they expand it.
I think they both would have been dead in the water within weeks if they didn't have a great video game component. And anyone that sort of Spyro, and that had a whole history that sort of morphed into Skylanders. And I think Spyro is a Skylander, right?
And narrative.
Yeah, narrative, and the story is there, and these have great stories. The other thing that they've done is there's the Webkins component that's tried and true. They have a way to monetize this platform, and it's going to be really monetized because these things cost $10 each. But every component is quality on its own level. These things have, they're quality plastic. It links to the narrative. All those pieces are there, and so I think that. I think if you didn't have a strong interactive experience, so the whole thing would just,
It says a lot when that's what it takes. Incredibly ambitious, cross-platform experience. We've seen a lot of nickel and diming through the years, and I just think if there's something little in my house, it's going to get lost. If it's supposed to be attached to an iPad somehow, forget it. Give it 3 days. Unless you can tether it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's RFID will be the tether. Pieces, come here.
Just to add one thing about Disney, because it really is a breakthrough for them to have allowed this, but what they've acknowledged is how kids play anyhow. The toy companies like to see, oh, I've got all of these together, and and G.I. Joe and Power Rangers never get together. But that's not really how kids play. They smash them all together and they make up their own stories. And for Disney to allow that to happen and to acknowledge that is a huge leap forward to a company that's very protective, and rightly so, of their characters and their IP.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it back. In the interest, Darren, am I watching me? This thing's at 0. Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah, so in the interest of time, and Claire always has a very strong list of not only what she likes, but what she doesn't like. And so I thought I'm going to turn the microphone over to Claire with her assistant, her lovely assistant, Chris.
This is, what child needs this? This is a puppet. This is billed as a puppet that does nothing walk down the hall to the nursery, go into the crib, and this is horrible. Who needs this? Who needs it? You think it's funny?
I've got 2 of them.
He's got 2 of them.
It's a novelty item. It's a novelty item.
Don't send it. All right. And here's another thing. Who needs this? Who needs this?
Everybody's saying, who needs this?
Who needs this? This has electronics in it. This is a case of just because you can, don't. What? You want this. Oh, do we have another positive reward? Can you see this work? Is this attractive? Right. You have 2 of these?
Where's your inner 8-year-old boy?
My inner 8-year-old boy, and this stops working, thankfully, after whatever. People really love this. Ready? I can't do it.
Yeah. What did H.L. Mencken said? No one ever went broke underestimating American taste.
Correct. All right, and then I have one more really ridiculous example of just because you can, don't. So this is, you want to hold this, Vanna? Thanks. So this is called iMat. It's supposed to have a USB and it's supposed to connect. Nowhere does it connect. It's supposed to teach languages, 3 different. It's
got an off switch.
Yeah. So it's supposed to teach different languages. I just need to read this to you. We have a really long evaluation process. But I have to read this to you. This is what is on the market. Ready? The grammar for the Spanish portion is bad. It borders on embarrassing. I cannot believe that someone didn't check the pronunciation of the animals or the prompts. The ones that stand out are rhinoceros. When the small rhino is clicked, it's pronounced incorrectly. But interestingly, the older rhino is correct. Fish in Spanish. I don't know this, we're trusting our experts. In Spanish, there's a difference between the fish that we eat and a living fish, much like pork and pig. They say the dead one on the toy. So you're looking at the fish and you're talking about the one that should be on your plate. Yeah, okay, congratulations. When you find the animal in the game, mode says you found it, but the verb is conjugated incorrectly. The list goes on and on. On and on and on and on and on and on. There seems to be some downloading capabilities involved. And a USB cord is included, but no mention is made in the instructions or on the box about what to do. Okay, that's great. Nothing. So the kids took this apart and they played with the active pen and they built the fort with the mat and used the magic pen to unlock the door. But nobody learned the word for dead fish. There you go. That was
Pesca and,
I don't know.
no, anybody? In Espanol? Okay, so we don't need that. So let me take it back home to you and then open it up for questions. Let's talk about the upcoming holiday season and the apps marketplace. I mean, clearly, they are not making this easy. Clearly, all of the tablets here that you're going to see, and the children's mobile phones, I can only imagine, that will be out by the holidays, can be dust or magic. They are as good as what gets rubbed up against them. This just happens to be one, but I think tablets are going to be hot on every kid's Christmas list. So let's ask our experts where the apps fit in, what the projections are for apps as they exist now in terms of holiday sales, and are you going to give your kids app cards? Chris?
No. You know, I think the tablets are very different. We've played with virtually all of them that are over there. And the ones that are, you know, you've got the InnoTab 3S and the LeapPad Ultra. Those are going to sell out, and those are in a very specific class by themselves. So it's about by parents for younger kids. The companies say it's 2 to 9, but no 9-year-old would be caught dead with one of those. And because it wouldn't be relevant. And it's once they start touching mom and dad's iPad or Samsung Galaxy or whatever, you know, it changes the experience for that. But there's so many. I don't think apps are really on kids' Christmas lists so much. It's something that parents are buying. So really, your goal is to communicate to parents about what you're doing. And just one other thing about the apps is that consistency is really frustrating. We just reviewed an app where you were supposed to touch it and get the animal noise. Well, if they didn't know what the animal noise was, you got like a boing or a chord or something like that, and it was very frustrating if you're a 2-year-old to think, you know, a giraffe makes a C major chord. It's really, you know, they don't, by the way.
Maybe not the giraffes in New York.
Yeah, I think the first thing the kids are going to do is download, you know, as many games as they possibly can afford or not afford, you know, on their children, on their parents' credit cards, and so it's going to be the gatekeeper, parents, to buy the apps, and that's really up to Apple, really, in terms of exposing parents to those apps. So.
I think great parental controls are an excellent idea for a Christmas gift.
Over the parents.
Yeah.
It seems that kids spend a lot of their time playing in between because they're so overscheduled today. That
Yes.
it's in the back seat, it's at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And so their life is full of interstitials in which they play for 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And so I think anything that's portable and not sloppy, it's tough to play with Lego or Play-Doh in the back seat. But this is pretty neat. So it would appear that there's a very, at least for the time being, it's going to be, I think, a pretty long life for any kind of portable play that's clean and neat like that.
This afternoon you'll talk to some real kids, and I think the one thing that you understand is that you can't talk down to them, and they understand quality. Once they sniff a responsive, nice iPad with retinal display, they know what's good. And don't try to give them a lousy Android tablet. And the kids want the same thing we want. And the other thing that sort of amazed me was I taught a class this summer, a camp for Scratch, and 8 of the 10 kids walked in with an iOS device in their pocket, and all of them had the password. All of them were downloading content, and almost 80–90% of the stuff was free.
How old?
These were 7 to 14. So they have the keys. They're in there, they're playing, they're seeing inappropriate content, they're making their own filters, and they're doing their own curating. Don't talk down to them, and I think that's
And so I'm going to turn into questions, 2 news items. The Apple Store, and you should watch this, just separated out their clinically approved apps for medical reasons. Think about what they could do if they started to carefully curate the children's content for parents. I think it's a huge area to watch, and I'm sure they're thinking about it.
They are.
Amazon, as we sat here this morning, announced a thank you price to the FAA, now that we can connect all the time, and you can get the Kindle entry machine for $69 for a limited time.
Brilliant.
If you promise to use it on landing and takeoff, but it's also
You purchase it on landing or takeoff.
right.
That's
It's
brilliant.
kind of amazing. So they're really looking to seed the market. Any questions for Ed? Seriously, you're looking at like 300 years of collective intelligence?
And this is also an opportunity to talk to reviewers. We have one back here.
So I've played with a lot of them as well, probably all of them. And it seems to me that some of these companies have an attitude of, we're making the money on the device and we don't care what happens later, we'll stick a bunch of crap on it. And then other devices like Apple and Kindle and maybe a couple of the other ones are trying to create an ecosystem that lasts. Do you guys have opinions on what you're seeing and how that matters? Because for people doing apps, it obviously matters.
Oh, Chris never has an opinion.
I never have an opinion. I see some of these other tablets, and they're loading them up with as much as they can license, and they're using it as a marketing tool. And if you go through the stuff that comes on the Navi or the stuff that comes on the XO tablet, it is just crammed full of stuff, and they're saying 130 different apps. But if you look at the apps, they're not very good quality. They're loaded with advertising, which parents hate. So it's really a question of they lose their credibility to curate for you at that point. And I think if you're dealing with the hardware people, they really need to not just look at it as a marketing, sort of a craven marketing tool, but what's our real mission? And XO has a good mission, but in order to make the money, I think they've sort of sold themselves out a little bit.
And by the way, Drip Hawkins spoke at our conference in San Francisco, and someone asked him about the future of tablets, and he said, tablets have always been around. Moses had tablets.
Yeah, another thing, also look to emerging distribution. Cable companies are really anxious to figure out what playing for children might look like on screens. There's a lot of things that will be happening this year that will hopefully lead this. I actually been thinking a lot about this at CES this year, and Lauren will help moderate. Lauren will MC the Kids at Play conference, and we're doing one session called The End of the One-Hit Wonder. And is it possible to continue to create one-hit great apps, or are we looking for an ecosystem and a structure that might bring the best to the surface? On the other hand, kids really need to know how to be discerning critics, so it's good that they get a little junk shoveled at them, right? Question?
Questions?
Anybody?
you were just talking about how Apple is separating out different content, and then I think Chris, you were talking a little bit about the age range. They have a new category now. It's 5 and under,
Right.
and they have 6 to 8. And then, do you think it is beneficial for developers like us to put our products in those little age groups, or are we better off, relying on the description in iTunes?
I think it's best to be realistic. I mean, that very often that for marketing purposes, a company will put like 2 to 9, but anybody looking at that knows that, the reality of a 2-year-old and the reality of a 9-year-old are not the same at all. I think if you're very focused on what the age is, you're doing a great service to parents, and your audience might not be as broad, but it'll definitely be deeper. So I think really helping parents understand what they're going to get is really important.
Does anybody, here's a chance to give the critics a critic. What do you guys think? Anybody have anything they want to say to a critic? Anybody get a review that they question how it happened? Over here? Great.
Yeah, I mean, on the subject of criticizing critics, present company accepted, and I mean that, I actually mean that. It seems like one of the problems with app criticism is that a lot of people who are not kind of in the business of app criticism are really bad at it. So, I mean, for example, there was an architecture app that shall remain nameless that was reviewed incredibly positively by the architecture press. And so I got it, I downloaded it, and it was just complete crap. And, I'm sure the guy who reviewed it was an excellent expert on architecture and probably could have done a very good job judging a building or a book or whatever. But he had no clue. So what could be done to improve the quality of the app reviewing core, as it were, outside the circle of people who are really in the business of critiquing apps?
I guess the question would be, though, is how do you find that person who is an architectural expert and is also very expert on understanding the nuances of an app and how it should work, etc. Aren't there people who can kind of blend those things? I mean, can't you read one critic, read the architect critic, and get his or her feedback, and then read somebody else's and make a form an opinion that way?
Well, and
No, go ahead, Rob, please.
no, and taking that even further, the whole crowdsourcing thing is really changing reviewing. Because, a reviewer has one opinion and he happens to use an Apple iPhone, or, he uses a Samsung Galaxy, and that experience is totally different. Got building experience, doesn't, has gardening experience, doesn't, knows apps, doesn't. At I was the editor of PC Magazine, we tried this experiment where we put different type of people on a project together, like reviewing printers. We just put one person who really needed beautiful copy and one person who understood the mechanics. It didn't work that much better, but I think the crowd's telling you. So I think if you're a reviewer, if you're looking to buy something, you look across reviews more, and it's become easier to do. That's sort of, but it's still, and if you look at the New Yorker today, there is an article on who will be the next David Poe or Walt Mossberg, and what's wrong with the definition of personal technology reviews as they exist today. It's a pretty good article. So, time's right. Oh,
Yeah, I'm just curious. There are so many products and apps coming out. It just seems the rate that these things are coming out is just getting faster and faster and faster. You are 5. How do you decide what you're going to do?
Faster and faster and faster. Yeah.
We get a lot of stuff over our desk, and we try to look at, because our site really is called Time to Play, and we really focus on play. So my background is somewhat in education, but I'm more confident in the play apps that have some pedagogy in them. So it's kind of like filtering out stuff. Like I also review theater in my spare time. I'm not going to go see the Amoeba in the Paramuseum in the basement in Brooklyn. I'm more likely to go see a Shakespeare play because that's my personal interest. So getting to know the people's interests, reading their stuff and knowing, oh, well, this person's going to write about this, is a great way to target it as well. And getting your users to post reviews as well, if you can, and any of those things to say, would you review this now? Is really important because so many reviews, one of the reasons we started doing what we're doing is on Amazon, you can tell when the review's been written by the PR person. By the mother-in-law, yeah.
Yeah, so it's similarly, we would never, I was pitched all the time by people whose app was about to come out or had just come out. And there's no way in a million years, I can even hear that pitch. There's no time to hear the pitch, much less go and test that out. I've got to devote my attention to things that have gotten just a little bit of traction, demonstrable traction from, and positive reviews from inside the industry, preferably from people who would know. Like sometimes I would look to Warren for signals as to what is coming up through the children's technology sector. So it would never, you gotta unfortunately go a little bit of grassroots, I think, to get some legit following before the major publication can pay attention.
I think we've talked about this here before, is that sometimes when apps come out and they're submitted to us or to Chris or to Bob or to Warren and anyone, they're not always ready. And we don't always know when a change is made or an update is made. So when we're reviewing a particular app or a toy, we say no prototypes, no hideous prototypes, but no prototypes.
That's production.
Yeah, oh
That's
yes, I know, okay, I was hoping. But really, if you're doing an app and you have an update, don't rush, in my opinion, don't rush to send it to a critic until, because you know in your gut that there are a few things that are buggy. You know that there are a couple of things that will be better or that just aren't ready for prime time. And it's really not it's not a fair critique of your work to send it before it is ready.
We're kind of in hemorrhage mode at CTR. We're just getting slammed by thousands. We don't want to talk to vice presidents. We wanted to see the nuts and bolts, price, what it is, and what particularly I'm looking for is innovation. I'm looking for, I'm right now doing a lot of like 1 or 2 minute or even 30-second looks at products, and I just push it to the side. I think I put 300 apps aside for our November issue that didn't go in, and then you've got all the video games and all the toys. I mean, it's just been an explosion in content. So I'm looking for innovation. I'm looking for high-profile products, maybe from Disney, that are low quality that I want to warn people about. I'm also looking for, especially the ones I love are the ones from small publishers who no one's heard of, that I can be the first to find and discover and really do something. And I think we're going to hear from some this afternoon. We got the guys from Little Bits, the Human Body. Tiny Bots. Sorry. Are they here, by the way? Where are you guys? Right, so you guys are going to show us what's in the human body, right? Right. Not literally, but so yeah, it's finding that. I found it through Neil. I think we all have a network of kind of who we listen to. And I listen to you, Bob. I don't know where you get your stuff. It's just like, where's this coming from? It's like, anyway.
Another question over here.
Okay.
I was thinking of a comment that I think, Chris, you made, which is parents hate advertising. And I think sometimes we have to remind parents that they hate advertising, because otherwise those are the apps that they get. And I know the panel, you all have so much knowledge in the tip of your finger about how things are made and how to review things and how to find things. You've internalized it. You guys know how to find the good things. I would encourage you, what I would like to see more of, because I love this when I get it from y'all, is not the 5 best toys for Christmas, but the 5 best approaches you should use in shopping for toys this Christmas. Or not the 5 best apps, but the 5 things you should never buy an app that does. Because I'm speaking as a parent, which is how I appreciate you, possibly more as a developer than as a parent. I forget, have I actually tried to do something that has constructive play? Or when you, instead of reviewing the latest Just Dance, when you buy a game for the console, make sure at least half of your games for console are active screen time to get people playing. Or if you're going to buy the Loom Kit thing for the girls, buy this, but then commit 3 hours the first time they open it to setting your child up to share information online, because that's how it can really be used. So I think helping people figure out how to review and helping people how to use the toys really is some of the guidance I need as a parent that I would love to suck out of your brains.
My sons have the Loom.
We're on it.
moving.
I think that's a wonderful point. You know, we come out with a list of our 20 most wanted toys of the year, but one of our mantras is always the hot toy is only hot if it's hot for your child, because every child is different, and we try not to trash toys because some kid might love it. But to your point, I mean, that's one of the things we do is to tell people what to expect. You know, what they're going to find in the box, what it's going to look like set up, and what to be aware of. Because sometimes, you know, if you try to put together the Barbie dream house right now, I dare you. It's really a frustrating nightmare that could drive you to drink. But we try to tell people that. But to your point, you know, the mainstream media, present company accepted, really wants that story, that quick bite story of what are the top 10 things for Christmas.
At Parents' Choice Awards, we say we're probably the antithesis of a hot toy list.
I just did a little analysis of the toy industry, and I looked through Walmart, and Target, Toys R Us, and looked at their hot toy list, and I found out that 70% of the hot toys for Walmart were from publicly traded companies, and which is pretty much Hasbro and Mattel.
That's what they bought.
Right, so you have to be careful because they're basically, they made a bet, and they go in a lot of inventory and so on. But what concerns me is particularly grandparents. You know, they see a hot toy and they think that's a great toy, and not necessarily, maybe, but not necessarily.
So, okay, so just, I'm going to give Warren a document I did about talking to, about getting your product reviewed and some things that you might want to think about or not think about, and he can distribute it. But as their agents, I'm going to say this, that they're really busy. They don't get paid an extraordinary amount of money to review apps, and there are things that you can do to shortcut, I'm going to say the thinking process just to be flippant about it, but everything's about context. You have a great new app, that's great. It came after what, it came before what, it does what, for whom, and here are the unique things about it. He'll test it, he won't take it at face value, but it certainly gives a context. We're all about, in an information-glutted age, everything is about the context. And probably the other thing you heard these guys say is they're not beta testers.
Yeah, so if this is our first app, or this is the fourth in a series, or whatever, in the first paragraph, that's great, great suggestion.
And so, and I'll give you this sort of like my 5 things, in addition to, we're going to all write over lunch and have the tips for parents by the end. But thank you, we're around. It's my favorite time of the year to sit here with these guys and with all of you and see Magic Big Bang. Thank you.